We begin the story tonight with that breaking news on the southern end of Salem, a wildfire that's causing level 3 go now evacuations basically in the outskirts of South Salem, north of the Rosedale area. They're calling this the Liberty Fire. We just learned 2 structures have burned, unclear if those are homes or not, and the fire's covering 100 acres. So far, no reports of injuries. The gathering point for evacuees has also just moved. It's now at Judson Middle School. The Oregon State Fire Marshal has mobilized air resources, including a helicopter and an air tanker. Here's a map now for those evacuation orders that are in place currently. The Marion County Sheriff's Office says the evacuation zone is west of Liberty Road South and Jory Hill Road. The red area on the map is in the Go Now zone. For perspective, about 600 people live in that level 3 evacuation zone. The yellow is the Beset zone 2. Right now, deputies are going door to door to let people know they need to evacuate. The fire started just before 3 this afternoon in a field off Liberty Road, and then in the wind spread quickly. Now to the rest of our show. Tonight we're going to take a deep dive into dysfunction. Yep, we're going to share lots of information from a new audit into the Joint Office of Homeless Services. It is not a pretty picture, but it's one that we all do need to see clearly, and that's why it's our big story tonight. Now, in theory, having one office that combines money from the city and county and coordinates work on the homeless problem, well, you know, that kind of makes sense. But today we got a disturbing look at the reality of that office, and it's pretty ugly. It came in the form of an audit by Multnomah County. I have my take on this, but first, let's hear from investigative reporter Evan Watson, who read the full report and talked with the auditor.
In many ways, the Joint Office of Homeless Services works as a contract manager. It collects money and gets it to homeless service providers that do the work across the Portland area. But if you ask those providers, and look, the Multnomah County Auditor did, that process needs work. Homeless service providers told the auditor that the Joint Office has been a confusing and chaotic organization, saying it needs to improve managing contracts and communicating. Sometimes the Joint Office failed to pay providers on time. One had to take out a line of credit while waiting for a payment. Another had a $300,000 invoice delayed over questions about a $25 line item. The audit found that Joint Office staffers often changed performance standards when standards weren't met, leading to a, quote, inefficient and inequitable system. Plus, there was a lot of staff turnover, and the leadership changes at the Joint Office over the last 2 years created problems. Here's one of the graphs from the Auditor's survey of homeless service providers. Almost half of them said the Joint Office was poor or very poor at coordinating between service providers. Auditor Jennifer McGuirk said the Joint Office groups that were focused on youth, adult, family, and other types of homelessness were siloed, often working alone with little communication and collaboration with the other groups. That needs to change.
Knowing kind of the challenges that homeless service providers have had, interacting with the Joint Office, getting paid by the Joint Office, is really important because we need providers to be able to be successful and provide the services that will help people get out of the cycle of homelessness that they might be in.
Another stat, 40% of homeless service providers told the Auditor's office that the Joint Office does a poor or very poor job at providing a countywide strategy for reducing homelessness. The main task they got to do. That shows a lack of clear direction, or at least communication among involved parties. Now, County Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson and county leaders responded to the audit. They agreed with most of these recommendations. On unspent tax money for homeless services, the county says it has a new plan to use the money for rent and employment assistance, shelter sites, and community organization grants. Vega-Peterson said, quote, "We are focused on both correcting past mistakes and moving forward with plans to reduce homelessness." The Joint Office has a new permanent director who says he wants to improve communication. And the county says 80% of its invoices were delivered within 10 days of acceptance. It wants to get that number to 100%. Here's the auditor on the county's response to her recommendations.
Management says they're going to take them on. And so the public can use that information to also help hold their government accountable and help us try to have a better system moving forward so that hopefully we can gain some traction on reducing homelessness in our area. The things we're pointing to are all just good management practices for having a functional system. And it should not be that difficult to achieve, frankly.
Ultimately, the auditor told me she expected the joint office to have better integrated systems since, well, it's been around since 2016.
Alrighty then, and here's my opinion on this. First, thank you to the auditors, Jennifer McKirk, Nicole DeWeese, and Mandy Hood, who dug into this mess and carefully picked out some of the dysfunction to hold it up to the rest of us and alert us. Second, after reading through the audit myself, I found myself shaking my head. I mean, the place is a mess. It feels like it's a ball of fishing line that's all hopelessly tangled. I wonder if it's time to just cut out the tangle and start over. I mean, if what we have now is success, seems like anything would be better. But it's an important office dealing with the biggest and most pressing problem that we have. They got to get this right. Right now, though, it's an agency with hundreds of millions of dollars that run through it, and it's dysfunctional. As Evan mentioned, the auditors found it has silos that keep information and cooperation away from other parts of the office, and it has awful communication on top of that. For example, those 5 different entry points for homeless folks to enter the system, each one has its own application process and assessment, and there's lousy coordination between all those systems. So some people may have to tell their stories over and over and over again as they try to enter the system. And on top of that, staff at the joint office either lied to the auditors looking for information or were so disorganized or incompetent, or maybe both, that they didn't realize they had the information that was being asked for. Here's what I mean. The auditors wrote that they wanted to verify a report called Newly Placed in Housing. It apparently had a number for the people the joint office got off the street and into housing. The auditors wanted to check the accuracy of that by getting the actual names of the people counted in that report. Seems pretty basic, but they were told by the joint office that those folks did not have the names and that the auditors should talk to the computer system administrator at the city of Portland, which actually had control of the homeless management information system. So they went there. And then the city of Portland administrator told them, no, we don't have the names, and sent the auditors back to the joint office. Next, the auditors asked the joint office for the data programming language that they used to create their report so the auditors could at least try to recreate it themselves and find the names that way. After they had run their own report and done that and showed it to the joint office staff, according to the audit, then the joint homeless staff finally gave them the list of names they'd been asking for all along. The same list that the joint office staff said they did not have. Come on, what a runaround. And there's much more. As Evan pointed out, the auditors found that when a nonprofit service provider could not meet the goals they'd been assigned, well, the joint office staffers just kind of adjusted the performance metrics so the goals could be met. And in the midst of the dysfunction, or maybe because of it, there's been so much turnover at that place, that critically important agency, the revolving door is spinning at high speed. Check this out. The auditors reported that since 2019, 300 people were hired and 250 people left. Blue here shows the hires, yellow is people leaving. That's 50 people leaving a year, leaving a place with only 100 staff total. That's 50% turnover. In one door, out the other. It's no wonder the place is in chaos. But it's not just people coming and going. The systems are clearly not in place for the joint office to function properly. A lot of the work with the homelessness is done by these outside groups, service providers, that the joint office pays. It's worth repeating. 49% told the auditors that the joint office did a poor to very poor job of coordinating the service providers. 48% said the office's policies are simply hard to understand. But it appears the joint office folks are living in a bubble, since 48% of the staff, well, they think they're doing pretty well providing policies that are easy to understand. And 42% said they did not have a clear system goals from the joint office. These are the service providers again. But you know, I mean, how about just saying, let's end homelessness? And the list goes on and on and on. Look, the bottom line here, the complaints we've heard from the county commissioners like Sharon Myron, well, the audit backs them up. Myron said there was no plan to end homelessness. The audit shows, yeah, that's accurate. Sure, there are lots of programs, but no overarching plan, at least not one that providers were told that are there. In fact, the providers were told that there's a variety of plans that are structured around sources of money instead of that overarching plan. Come on, that needs to change right now. Taxpayers deserve to have an efficient, well-run system that spends their money wisely. The organizations helping in the effort deserve to get clear and consistent information and to get paid on time, which the auditors found is not happening. And the people living on our streets deserve community efforts that are more than Band-Aids. A focused and coordinated plan can help them move to a better life. A scattershot approach just brings more misery and wastes more money. It's time for the Joint Office of Homeless Services to live up to its name and get its act together. And if it can't do that, then it is time for the commissioners to shut them down and start over from scratch. We are all long past being patient on this issue. At least that's my opinion. You don't have to agree, although I think you should, but you do have to communicate. Email your thoughts to me, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. And while we're on the topic of homelessness, many parents in the Portland area are fed up with homeless camps near their children's schools. And we've heard the most feedback from families with students at Cleveland High School in Southeast Portland. Classes are coming up. They start next week. And students are already having to pass by a camp as they go to sports practices that started earlier this month. The city says crews are removing camps along safe routes to schools, but Cleveland parents say it can't happen soon enough. They tell us that they've reported a camp numerous times, but nothing happens. Blair Best has our update.
In a tent on a small side street off Southeast Powell Boulevard, Janai Record finds protection.
We are making French toast.
She's the camp cook, and for good reason.
It's really not safe to be a single female outside. So it might be smart to find a bunch of people and cook for them. Then you might find it a little safer.
Little did she know, her slice of safety is on the city's radar to be removed, seen as it's sandwiched between Cleveland High School and the school's athletic fields. Classes start next week.
So it was this time last year when Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler prohibited homeless camping on streets that K-12 students use to walk to school. That's streets like this one, which leads to Cleveland High School, but is now lined with tents.
City crews have cleared this camp numerous times throughout the year, all part of a citywide increase in campsite removals. So far this August, 303 camps have been removed in Portland. Homeless people at this one have until Monday to clear out.
Oh, I'm used to it. I'm not surprised. It's just how it is.
City outreach crews offered them shelter Wednesday morning.
Who wants shelter? I do. It's like, who wants a mini? I do. Oh, well, they're the wait list. Oh, well, they're this. I'm like, well, what do I do? I said, hey, guys, what do I do? What do I do? And they said, well, you get a hold of one of us. I'm like, but you're right there. Like, I'll go now.
She hasn't heard back since.
I don't know if they'll come back. But see, there's no direct path. There's no process.
We're told Mayor Ted Wheeler recently met with Cleveland High School's principal to talk about the camp. And the city's impact reduction team meets monthly with Portland Public Schools about similar issues.
Up and down this street, kids are walking from the high school to the fields, parking their cars in this area, and it's really to the point where it's become unsafe.
Derek Ranta has 3 kids at Cleveland High and has reported this camp to the city all summer long.
Open nudity, urination, defecation, drug use. People yell at them on occasion, say vulgar things. They're teenagers, but they shouldn't have to be experiencing those kind of things on a daily basis.
Steve, who camps there, agrees.
School kids shouldn't have to see this, I don't think so.
Certainly, we know this is a vulnerable population in our community, the homeless population, but we're talking about kids and children that are equally vulnerable.
The mayor's office is asking anyone who sees homeless camps blocking access to schools to report it through PDX Reporter. In Southeast Portland, Blair Best, KGW News.
Now, many of you are probably thinking that those camps will be back in the same spot within days or even hours of being removed, and sadly, you're probably right. We saw that exact thing play out near our TV station here along Southwest 13th Avenue in Portland. The camp was posted for removal last week, and early Tuesday morning, everything was cleared out. But several hours later, a few tents were back, and as of today, the entire camp is back. Yesterday, during Governor Kotek's Portland Task Force meeting, Mayor Ted Wheeler asked for $12 million to create a strategy to keep homeless camps from returning to the same locations. Now, whether he'll get it or not remains to be seen. We had to make some content adjustments because of our wildfire coverage at the top of the show. So our segment on your thoughts involving the governor's task force, well, that's going to be featured tomorrow. And if that doesn't excite you enough to watch, we're also getting a look at the data that was presented to the task force members, even though the meeting was closed to the public. That information paints a pretty grim picture of Portland. We'll bundle all of that together for you tomorrow, right here on The Story. Up next on The Story, we told you how to get involved in the legislative session, and one woman in Milwaukee heard our story and took action.
I first heard about testifying in the Oregon legislature on KGW The Story.
Now she's celebrating a big win for victims of domestic violence.
As a citizen advocate, which is I guess what I am now, it was a real eye-opener.
What she says it was like to help pass an important new law in honor of her late daughter, when The Story returns. A few months ago, we shared a segment here on The Story about how to get involved in the legislative session. You know, how to contact your lawmakers, testify in a hearing, be part of the process in bills becoming a law. We want to encourage all of you to get involved in the democratic process, and anyone can do it and make a difference. Take Kelly Harris, for example. She saw our segment and she was encouraged to contact her lawmakers. She had lost her daughter, Kelsey, to suicide after Kelsey was strangled in a domestic violence incident. Harris told lawmakers that she wanted to get involved in bills that had to do with domestic violence, especially any that involved strangulation. Well, turns out they had one that they were working on. House Bill 2676 would expand victim compensation. That's money and resources provided to crime victims. One of the parts of the bill would cover the use of strangulation kits. They help healthcare workers collect evidence and provide medical treatment to people who've been strangled. Harris contacted advocates and testified in support of the law, and her work paid off. The bill was held up by the Republican walkout for a while, but when they returned, it passed, and Governor Tina Kotek signed it earlier this week. Here's Kelly Harris.
it was very elating, and I was holding my breath for a long time, and I just thought it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And then, really in the 11th hour, everybody came together, and it did happen. So I'm very appreciative of the legislature putting their differences aside to really do something that's going to help a lot of crime victims here in Oregon. And this is just the first step, though.
You go. Harris says there's still a long way to go in helping domestic violence victims. Not all of Oregon's counties are using the strangulation kits, for example. And she wants to see a statewide response program on domestic violence like other states have. But she said she learned a lot by going through the legislative process.
As a citizen advocate, which is, I guess, what I am now, it was a real eye-opener. I had expected it to go faster than it did. And then, of course, when the walkout happened, it just really deflated my sense of whether or not anything could ever get done. And yet it did. And so I guess in reality, it eventually happened, but it just happened slower than I thought it would as a consumer.
Yep, it's never pretty watching the sausage being made. If there's something you're passionate about, the next session doesn't start until next year, but you can check out our segment now and get yourself prepared. You can watch it on our KGW YouTube channel. The video is called How to Get Involved with the Oregon Legislative Process from Your Own Home. We hope you do, and we hope you'll tell us about it. Still to come here on The Story, the city of Portland's government is changing, and a big election is coming up in 2024. This week, we're getting our first look at the finalized maps showing the city's 4 new districts. Details on each district when The Story returns. As the city of Portland's form of government prepares to change, thanks to approval from voters, one of the big to-dos was splitting the city up into 4 separate voting districts. Voters in each district will elect 3 city council members instead of having the whole city vote for the entire council. This week, we finally learned how the city is being split up. The commission charged with drawing those lines approved the final map. Take a look. You can see the 4 districts. District 1 is East Portland from north to south. District 2 is some of North and Northeast Portland. District 3 is a lot of Southeast Portland with some people in Northeast. And District 4 is the entire west side and some of Southeast near Selwood and Eastmoreland. If you can't really tell where you are on the map, that's understandable. The city says they're working on an online lookup tool so that you'll be able to plug in your address and see what district you're in. They haven't yet said when that online lookup will be available, but you can sign up for an email update by visiting the website there on your screen, portland.gov/transition/updates. If you sign up, you'll get monthly newsletters on the transition progress, and you'll find out when you can look up your address. We also have the map posted on KGW.com if you want to take a look for yourself, and you can zoom in on that. I did it from my address. The commission says they've tried to keep the districts at roughly equal population, and they tried to keep landmarks as borders when they were able to, like the Willamette River as most of one border and bigger roads and highways for others. Again, you'll be choosing 3 city council candidates starting in the next fall's election. You'll use ranked choice voting, so you'll rank your top 3 candidates in order of preference. The whole city is going to vote for mayor in that election as well, and the mayor will appoint a city manager. They will take over the day-to-day operations of the city's bureaus, while all 12 new city councilors will work on policy decisions. Some candidates for next year's election already have their campaigns up and running. Here are the people who filed to run under Portland's small donor elections program. Currently, City Commissioner Mingus Mapps plans to run for mayor. In District 1, East Portland, 1 candidate has filed. 3 people have filed to run in District 3, which is mostly Southeast Portland. No one yet for Districts 2 or 4, but I'm sure that will change, and we'll keep an eye on it. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. And remember, the good stuff is coming up next. I will see you right back here tomorrow at 6:30.